Yeah, two things I want to talk about in the gaming news world this week. I missed last Wednesday because Summer Game Fest chaos, but we're getting back into it. The first thing we should definitely dive into is Bungie officially delaying their next game, Marathon. This came this week as a surprise to some, but not really. If you've played the game or paid attention to the game, a delay really makes sense. Let's just say that. So Bungie's official statement came out confirming a delay with no actual release date as of right now. It's like an indefinite delay. This game was scheduled to release in September of this year, but anyone who's gotten their hands on it has kind of seen that it feels like it needs a lot more time. I've actually had the privilege of going to Bungie and spending a ton of time playing a work in progress version of the game. And what I saw was like, yeah, it was kind of fun with friends. It just felt like it needed a lot more. It needed something. But I'll get more into that in a little bit. The official statement here reads this. Thank you not only for your passionate feedback around the Marathon reveal and alpha playtest, but also for your patience through every comment and real-time conversation on social media and Discord, blah, 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 blah. After much discussion with our dev team, we've made a decision to delay the September 23rd release. The alpha test created an opportunity for us to calibrate and focus the game on what will make it uniquely compelling. Survival under pressure, mystery, and lore around every corner, raid-like endgame challenges, and Bungie's genre-defining FPS combat. Apparently, they're implementing more changes and fixes and like actionable stuff, which is cool. Not just a vague delay, but actual actionable items and things that they're going to address. Here's the list. Upping the survival game, more challenging and engaging AI encounters, more rewarding runs, making combat more tense and strategic, doubling down on the Marathon universe with increased visual fidelity, more narrative and environmental storytelling to discover and interact with, a darker tone that delivers on the themes of the original trilogy, and adding more social experiences, a better player experience for solo duos, proximity chat, so social stories can come to life. So we'll work backwards from there. Adding more social experiences. Proximity chat should have been a thing. For this type of game, just even if you jumped into the alpha or anything like that, it felt like it needed that. So yes, good move. A better player experience for solos and duos also should absolutely be a thing. But the interesting part here is the doubling down on the Marathon universe, right? It says a more narrative and environmental storytelling to discover and interact with, a darker tone that delivers on the themes of the original trilogy. That's interesting because what they've established here with its visual identity feels very far from the original Marathon stuff. I think that visual identity that they have here is pretty cool, is pretty stylistic, but of course it has also caused some troubles with their whole like art stealing scandal, that whole thing that has gone down. But to me, like, and I'm not even like a hardcore Marathon person from back in the day. I played the original, but to me it just felt like they had the Marathon name, but they wanted to make this other game with this cool visual style. So it just never really mashed up. Now, for them to make it more marathon-y, I don't think that's something you could just do in a couple of months. I am not like a game maker. I am an armchair asshole. I understand that. But I feel like doubling down on the Marathon universe and increasing visual fidelity, a darker tone, more narrative stuff, that's not something you just kind of whip up in a couple of weeks, a couple of months. You know, I'm really curious because that is one of the sticking points for me when I did see the game, is that it did feel like the whole story and lore stuff, they were just kind of make it up as they went along, which maybe that's worked for Bungie in the past with how they've handled some Destiny stuff and how they've rolled into expansions and kind of leaned into players like what they were into or what they wanted to make at the time. But with this one, it felt like they really didn't have a lot like right from the get-go, or they were keeping it vague on purpose. I don't know, but it just never, how they talked about the story, how they talked about Marathon and everything, just never really quite sat right with me. And I'll be totally honest too, like I just feel like the live service thing, the extraction shooter style of gameplay also is something that I feel like just will hold back the creativity that I think Bungie might still have. Halo, whatever, but like all the cool shit that was in Destiny, the cool art, and like making that art really come to life in a well built out realized world. Then the other category, upping the survival game, more challenging and engaging AI encounters. That part, I actually really, that was one of my main takeaways from playing Marathon. Credit where credit is due. I actually thought the encounters with AI were actually incredible. Like I thought some of the stuff that AI bot characters would do in combat was really interesting, and they felt very challenging and engaging. But if they're trying to double down on that, cool. That's probably one of the game's biggest strengths. More rewarding runs with new types of loot and dynamic events. Dynamic events, it definitely needs more interesting stuff. More rewarding runs, I think for me, it's just the loot needs to have more tangibility to it, more of a good feel, real satisfaction, and real difference-making stuff. And making combat more tense and strategic, that's interesting. I don't know how you do that. Again, I'm not a game maker, but cool to see, I guess. But the question lies here. Again, this is all, they're going off of feedback. They've seen players react to the alphas and they're moving off of that. Is that going to be enough? Like, is it really going to give Marathon the big appeal that it needs? For me, you know, what I played with it, I didn't think it was the worst game in the world, but it felt like it was missing something. And what it was missing, I think, this is going to sound harsh, but just that like overall fun factor. To me, it felt like Bungie was like, hey, we think extraction shooters are cool. We're going to make one. But with no real unique hook or aspect to it other than it being accessible to mainstream players and having Marathon's name attached to it. I feel like it just needs a little something else. So hopefully when they're in the kitchen here, they can come up with something there. Marathon is just interesting to watch as someone who pays attention to industry news and just likes the video game world and the goings-ons, right? Like, because, you know, Marathon is a big project. Sony, of course, has invested in Bungie. And to me, Marathon has felt like, you know, yeah, we're relying on player feedback. We're making it up like, they're not making it up as they go along, but it's had a very loose feel to it. So for something so big and so expensive from such a storied studio to be so kind of loose and shooting from the hip is interesting. Is that reactive nature going to be reactive enough to justify this? Or is it still ultimately going to be a big studio not being reactive enough and fast enough to really right the ship? A delay is good. A delay is always good. And I will still hope for the best here. I will always just hope that, yeah, maybe this eventually turns out to be a great game, because I think unlike some people you listen to online, I just think more games that are good is good for the world, especially with everything going on. If another game comes out and instead of it being bad, it turns out good, that's a net positive. Does that make sense? But yeah, we'll see. I like that they put out a delay and actionable items and things that they're going to address. Is that enough? I don't know. Again, I am not a Bungie expert or like a Bungie nerd or anything like that. And when I played it, I thought it was fairly decent, but I think it's missing a little something. So I just hope they find that something. Whether it's vibes, story, fun factor in the gameplay hook, just something there. But for now, I guess we just have to wait and see. That's one bit of news. The other thing I wanted to talk about this week is Xbox and AMD. Xbox has now officially announced a next generation AMD deal, saying that the next Xbox console will feature AMD chips, which isn't a massive surprise because the previous Xbox has AMD. And also, of course, Xbox announced that collaboration with Asus, the ROG Ally X. That thing has an AMD chip in it as well. But with this announcement, a couple of other little interesting nuggets from it. The breakdown is from Video Games Chronicle. I'll link all the sources in the description down below if you want to read up on that, of course. But here, Microsoft has announced a multi-year agreement with AMD to create chips for future devices, which it says will not be tied to a single store or device. Now, that part here is interesting because I actually got my hands on the Asus ROG Ally X and I liked it. I think it seems like it's a pretty solid device. I like the kind of handheld grips to it. I just like handheld PC stuff. But what excited me the most was the allure of it being a Windows device that had none of the Windows bullshit stapled onto it. It was bare bones Windows with an Xbox interface that ran games with like all different storefronts. So not just Steam, not just like Microsoft's store thing, but also GOG, Epic, whatever. That to me is enticing. You can do this with other devices, but it's fiddly. But like just to have it baked in and a natural thing for a more casual user, I think is really cool. And VGC, and I quote, says, "It's possible Xbox's other future devices will adopt a similar approach," with Sarah Bond in that whole video presentation thing saying that Microsoft's gaming arm is, quote, "working closely with the Windows team to ensure that Windows is, quote, the #1 platform for gaming." And again, to reiterate, it's a multi-year agreement for AMD to provide their chips for all of Microsoft's like gaming devices. So yes, the handheld, but also those next generation devices. But again, to go back to this, Windows, making Windows the #1 platform for gaming has been the big talk. You know, I've heard the phrase Xbox used a little bit less here. Does that mean they're abandoning the Xbox branding? I think absolutely not, but I do think it is just an interesting shift in language to pay attention to, because Xbox and Microsoft people are so intensely media trained, and every single word and phrase and doubling down of every word and phrase is scrutinized. So I think this does show a marked change. Microsoft is no longer getting a piece of the gaming world pie as Xbox, it's getting into the gaming world pie as Microsoft with Xbox's help. At least that's how it feels to me. When Xbox specifically is mentioned, it's quotes like this from Sarah Bond. At Xbox, our vision is for you to play the games you want with the people you want, anywhere you want. That's why we're investing in our next generation hardware lineup across console, handheld, PC, cloud, and accessories. So again, it goes back to what I'm trying to say in my awkward phrasing. Essentially, Xbox now serving more as the Trojan horse for Windows to become more powerful, for Windows to get more invested in the gaming ecosystem, the gaming pie share, so to speak. And, you know, I get, like, you can quote me on this, and, like, you know, people will probably throw this in my face like 5 years down the line if it all goes wrong or whatever, but I don't know. I think I like a device that lets me play a bunch of different storefronts and a bunch of different things I own, whatever company makes that device. It's not about like platform loyalty or ecosystem loyalty or anything like that. I think for me, it's like, I just want, I like I love the attraction of owning one thing that does literally everything. And I wonder if that's what Xbox, and really Microsoft more importantly, is doubling down on here. Again, the platform stuff, the platform war stuff, this type of stuff is always difficult for me to talk about, because like, I don't know what these people are doing. I don't know what these corporate people are saying, but at the very least, the one thing I've been saying consistently about Xbox for years now is that they keep my job interesting, because they're always doing weird and interesting and unconventional new stuff that are, you know, fun to talk about. They're shaking things up. PlayStation, God love them. I love my PlayStation 5. They release the console, you buy the console, they make the games. The games are expensive. There you go. I love that. I play those types of games. That's my thing. Xbox, they go out there and then they try Xbox Game Pass. They try the cloud streaming. They try, which, you know, PlayStation has done as well, but like they try this now with like different platforms and shit like that, and more game publishing, multi-platform stuff. But those are the news things I wanted to talk about this week. So I want to know what you guys think about AMD and Xbox's marriage, but also Xbox leaning even more into getting Microsoft into the world of gaming, or really getting Windows into the world of gaming. Let me know what you think about that. Let me know what you think about Firebreak, but also, of course, Marathon's delay. Did you try the alpha? What does it need to do for you? Are you someone on the outside just talking shit? What could it possibly do to make you interested? Let's talk about any of this stuff down in the comments, man. Hit me up. If you like talking games with us and you get what I'm trying to do here, I just talk about stuff I love and stuff I find interesting. Clicking the like button helps. But that's it. I got a lot more game previews for you guys. I got my hands on a bunch of stuff at Summer Game Fest. Keep your eyes peeled for that. I'm also playing like a new game every week at this point. So yeah, subscribe if you're new, but that's it. All I ask is have a great day. I'm Jake Baldino. Subscribe because video games, pizza's on me.